Hello again, and if you have not been listening to these short devotionals that I have been having every day, I'd like to say welcome. And I'm John Kuert, the interim pastor at First Assembly in Newcastle, and I hope they're a blessing to you as we share these thoughts each and every day through the month of April. And if you haven't been to the church for a while, or if you've never been to the church, I just would invite you to come and be a part of our drive-in church. We've been having that since Easter Sunday, and we'll have it again this week at 10:30. So come on out. And it's a little bit different. It's a lot unique, but it's great. It's great to be together. So this week I've been sharing with you from Philippians chapter 4, a great passage that talks about thinking on certain things, thinking good thoughts. And we need to hear that, I think, especially in these days with this coronavirus pandemic that we are all living under. And I hope that it will be a help in helping you to get through the difficult days that we are in right now, and live through them. Not just get through them, but live with a sense of victory and celebration through it all, because God is in control. He's still on the throne, and so we need to rejoice in that. And that's how this passage of Scripture in Philippians 4:4-9 starts out with, "Rejoice in the Lord always, and again I say rejoice." So anyway, I'd like to begin by asking you a question. Do you know you have an amazing machine inside your head? Yes, you do. It's called the brain. Now, you might not have a high IQ. Maybe you have average IQ, maybe below average. Whatever. Your brain is still something that is very, very amazing. Absolutely amazing. Within it, there are an estimated 100 billion nerve cells and 100 trillion connections. The building blocks, of course, of the brain are neurons, which receive and carry and relay billions of messages every second. Did you know that inside the skull of your head is more information stored than in the Library of Congress with all of its 17 million volumes? That's pretty amazing for a little machine that only weighs about 3 pounds. Much has been learned in the last 100 years, but the whole thought process still remains a mystery to scientists and psychologists. Well, one thing is not a mystery about the mind. That's how you think is going to affect you. It is. The way you think is going to affect you. The mind and all of its inner workings and details of it may still be a mystery to scientists, but one thing is sure. We know this, that the way you think, it's going to affect your outlook, it's going to affect your attitude, it's going to affect your Christian life, it's going to affect your relationships, everything. So it's important to learn how to think properly. And in these verses, Paul emphasizes the need for a good thought life. And the Christian life is more than just the external. It's more than just a list of rules or obeying the do's and refraining from the don'ts. The Christian life is more challenging than just obeying a set of rules. True Christianity is about the internal and about your thought life especially. And we must transform our thought life. In fact, some of us might need a revival of our minds. The Bible speaks about this kind of transformation in your life, and I think that we can rather correctly say that nothing will transform your life more than keeping your thoughts on the things that are good and true and pleasing to God especially. So with all that's going on in our lives in these days, between the pandemic and the panic and pandemonium as a result of these draconian measures that we're experiencing, we need to pay attention what the Bible is saying here in this passage of Scripture in particular. So first of all, a couple of days ago, we talked about how we need to keep praising. Keep praising who he is, remember who he is, and what he has done for us. That's important. Keep praising. Secondly, keep perspective. Remember we said the Lord is at hand, and the word, or the Lord is near. And that word near in the Greek means near in place or time. So what that means is the Lord is near to us in our present circumstance, but he's also, his coming is near. The Lord is near. When Paul was writing that, he was talking to the believers and saying that we need to be watching and waiting for the second coming of Christ. So, first of all, we need to keep praising. Secondly, keep perspective. And thirdly, today, keep positive. Keep positive. So important, so important. And yet it's very difficult. I've had a bit of a difficult time this week with all of the current events and what I've been hearing, and just feeling a sense of frustration with what is going on, and feeling like we are losing our rights as American citizens. And as a matter of fact, I was planning almost to go to the Harrisburg protest on Monday, but my wife prevailed and I didn't go. But I'm concerned, and it does put you in a negative mindset. But we have to keep positive. Now, Norman Vincent Peale, I don't know, some of you might remember him. He wrote a book many years ago called The Power of Positive Thinking. Most of us didn't pay too much attention to Norman Vincent Peale because we felt like his book was a kind of a mind over matter thing. But I went to one of his retreats several years ago and found out that when he first wrote his book, his publisher said, "Who do you want to reach? Do you want to reach just the Christians, or do you want to reach everybody?" And he said, "Well, I want to reach everybody." And so his publisher said, "Well, then I would suggest that you entitle your book, instead of The Power of Positive Faith, that you entitle it The Power of Positive Thinking." So originally, Norman Vincent Peale was going to entitle his book The Power of Positive Faith, but he changed it because of his publisher's recommendation. And I believe that this is the key to our having peace of mind, being positive. And this is where we fail most. Too often we allow our minds to dwell on the negatives in our lives rather than the positives. And I think that most of us are quite adept to seeing the glass half empty rather than half full. The things that happen to us in life tend to drag us down and cause our thoughts to turn negative. But we have to learn to discipline ourselves to do what the Apostle Paul said in 2 Corinthians 10:5 when he said, "Take every thought captive and make it obedient to Christ." We need to pay attention to what we're thinking about. Don't allow our minds to wander into all kinds of directions. We need to keep it under the Spirit's control. So Paul gives us a list of things here that we can fill our minds with in order for us to have peace. You might want to think of these things as a checklist. And as a thought enters your mind and you begin to dwell on it, ask yourself if that thought meets the following standards. So here's this little prescription for peace, I think. Keep your minds on things that are true, he says. That means that we don't wander off and start thinking things up in our minds, but is something really valid? Is it really true? Does it correspond to reality and to God's declaration of truth in his word? Or is it just a figment of my imagination? Whatsoever things are noble or honorable? Does this thought place a high value on people? And am I being noble and honorable by praying for them, even if they're my enemies? Whatsoever things are right or just, does this thought correspond with God's laws of conduct? Is this thought that I'm thinking pure? Are my thoughts pure and holy, or mixed up with rationalizations that lead to sin? Paul said, whatsoever things are lovely, things that are beautiful and emotionally, spiritually, are they uplifting? Are they encouraging? Whatsoever things are of good report or admirable, thoughts that are highlighting the good things that are happening, or are we focusing on the bad? Things that are excellent, do we think about the stuff that's important, top of the line, useful, meaningful, or are we down in the gutter? Think about things that are praiseworthy. If others knew what you were thinking, would they praise you for it? Will God reward you for what you're thinking right now, or will you receive discipline from God for what you're thinking and the actions that will come from those thoughts? So Paul says all these things, whatsoever things are true and good and lovely and excellent, praiseworthy, all these things in this list here in Philippians chapter 4. Think on these things. So we need to keep our minds on the things that are good, the things that are praiseworthy, especially God. He's worthy of our praise. And the things that are of good report. And we need to keep perspective, and we need to keep our focus on the Lord, and keep our eyes on the good things, and keep positive. So the battle for peace is lost or won in our minds. So I would encourage you this week to really focus on this passage of Scripture. Let it sink in. Read it over and over again. Memorize it even. Meditate on it. And let it really touch you inwardly, especially in these days in which we are living. It's a difficult time. It really is. And it's troubling in many ways. But we need to keep that peace of God that passes all understanding in our hearts and our minds. So God bless you today. Have a great day, and Lord willing, we will see you tomorrow.